Today we're going to hear 5 bills: House Bill 2068, 2069, 2070, 2071, and 2371.
We're going to move forward with the subcommittee. Take roll after roll call. Representative Franklin, want to proceed with the first bill?
Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Diane Franklin. I represent Southern Camden and Eastern Macleod. Today I have 4 bills for your consideration. I'm going to go ahead and introduce those and run through them. I guess putting on my chair hat for just a minute. Then Representative Koenig is going to run through his bill, and then we'll go back to questions. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, the first bill is House Bill 2068. And what this does is it adds the prohibition of intentional donations and anatomical gifts for medical, scientific, and therapeutic use. It also codifies federal law, making it a Class C felony with the possibility of a fine no less than twice the amount of any valuable consideration received. What we had came to light during the interim, and Children and Families joined Ways and Means and took up the issue of whether or not baby body parts were being sold or could be sold in the state of Missouri. We had about 3 committee hearings on this issue, and this legislation has come from that. So that's House Bill 2068. House Bill 2069 is the whistleblower protection. There is an amendment with that bill. I was very grateful to receive that input. That would prohibit a supervisor or authoritative figure in a hospital, ambulatory surgical center, pathology lab, or disposal facility. And that comes from the amendment. All involved with fetal remains from elective abortions, from hiring, firing, penalizing, discriminating against, or taking retaliatory measures against an employee for blowing the whistle, if indeed the activity of selling fetal remains was taking place. That's the essence of that bill. House Bill 2070 remains of human fetuses. This would redefine remains of a human fetus to read the remains of dead offspring of a human being that has reached a stage of development, so that there are cartilaginous structures or fetal and skeletal parts after an abortion or miscarriage, whether the remains have been obtained by induced, spontaneous, or accidental means. This relates to final disposition of a human fetus of less than 20 weeks, and other states have enacted such legislation. And then the final bill is House Bill 2071. It is aborted tissue reports. It would change the requirement of representative sample of tissue sent to the pathologist to include all tissue removed at the time of the abortion. The tissue report would include certification that disposal comply with state law, and it mandates that DHSS submit an annual report on the abortion procedure conducted over a calendar year to the General Assembly so that we could see exactly what was taking place with that. That was yours. Okay.
Thank you. I'm Representative Andrew Koenig from the 99th District out of West St. Louis County. Thank you for allowing me to present House Bill 2371 today. And what this bill is really getting at is really tracking the process of the abortion throughout the process to make sure there are no body parts being sold in the state. The first part makes it a Class C felony for any scientific or experimental use of fetal body parts. The second part says that when you have disposal of fetal remains, that must be in compliance with the Department of Natural Resources, and that the path lab gets the entire fetal remains for inspection. So that way there can be a report of gross findings, gestational age, percent blood clot versus percent of fetal remains. It also requires a unique tracking number, so that way we can have some verification when the department gets a report, and it requires the report be sent to the department, and that there's also follow-up. There's also a part of it that requires an investigation of each abortion facility in Missouri, and that these investigations are done at random, so that way they're not necessarily expecting it. It also requires an annual report be sent to the General Assembly to review. And so that's pretty much what the bill does. And what we're trying to do, we're trying to make sure or verify that baby body parts are not being sold in the state.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and we'll call roll.
Representative Franklin?
Here.
Representative Neely?
Here.
Representative Meredith?
Here.
Representative Beard?
Here.
Representative Bratton?
Here.
Representative Brown?
Here.
Representative Cannon? Representative Hagener? Representative Lauer? Representative Newman?
Here.
Representative Norm?
Here.
Representative Rivoli?
Thank you. I think that concludes our portion of the bills. Are there any questions from the committee on any of these? And I think that we need to specify what bill and we'll move forward with that. Representing the proceed.
Yes, to inquire, Mr. Chair.
Proceed.
Good morning, and I want to get into some of the purpose. I also sat on the interim committee with you all this summer. We also, in fall, we know that this costs the taxpayers a great deal of money. We're still trying to determine what that cost is. So I guess I'll start with Representative Franklin as your sponsor.
Can I address that one question that you just said? You said the interim committee cost a great deal of money. The whole point of the legislative body is to look into state government, look in to see what's going on in the state. And, you know, we have a $27 billion budget, and the interim committee was just a fraction, by a very small amount of money. And so I would have to dispute that with you.
Well, Representative, let me continue here since I do have the floor. In terms of, I actually sat on that same committee with you all, and believe me, that was based for the most part on a video, the nationwide video. And that's what we spent that interim committee a great deal of time on. And I believe you all mentioned that these bills are coming from those committee meetings this summer and fall. You have not really stated, either one of you, what the purpose of your legislation is, but you did mention the interim committee, and yet the interim committee was basically, you considered that the investigation of this video.
We did state the purpose. The purpose is to make sure that fetal remains are not being sold for
Okay,
experimentation
let
in
me,
this
let me
state.
continue, Representative.
And there's no question that these type of activities are happening across the
Let me
country.
continue my question.
And
please.
in addition to that,
Excuse
as
me,
you know,
Representative, this
it's
is my
video.
inquiry of you.
Well, I'm
I am
answering
the
your first
committee.
question.
This
Your
is
first
my
question.
inquiry of you. I have not finished
And
my
to
question,
answer that
Representative.
question, the
I
very
will
first one
continue
is
talking
that
because
St.
I have
Louis,
the floor.
in our
Representative,
state of
Representative
Missouri,
this is
Representative
my
Meredith.
inquiry of you.
Representative Newman, I'm sorry. All right.
This is my inquiry. If I
let's
can
get
be
into
allowed
it.
to
You're asking
continue,
questions.
please.
but you asked a question.
I need to be able to finish my inquiry, Madam or Mr.
Well,
Chair.
at what point are you going to get to the question? that we
Excuse
can
me,
answer?
I do have the mic and I will finish. I will finish. In terms of the, again, we're going back to, you mentioned your purpose of these bills is from the interim committee. And as a member of those, and I was at every single committee hearing, the intent on that was the investigation of a video. Now, let me clarify for the hearing here, for those of this committee who were not present. This video that we're talking about has been debunked over and over and over again. And let me tell you, the Missouri did their own investigation of this video, as did 11 other states. They came back with no evidence of any wrongdoing. In fact, there were 2 investigations that we learned actually happening in Missouri, and that was through the Attorney General, who found no evidence of wrongdoing of our current statutes. We also had an investigation through the Department of Health and Human Services. They also concluded there was no wrongdoing of any of our current statutes. 8 additional states besides the 12 that I mentioned investigated, again, Planned Parenthood, and the video found no wrongdoing. 8 additional states refused to do an investigation because they found lack of evidence. There were 5 congressional committees actually doing the same thing that we did this summer.
Representative, is there a question?
Yes, there is. 5 congressional committees found no evidence. So therefore, for the information for this committee, this video that we're talking about, actually the maker and the employee of the company that made this video are now under federal indictment. They have they're going to be prosecuted. Another U.S. district judge has banned the release just recently of any additional footage, citing the increase, and this is real. And what we're talking about here today is affecting real people. These investigations, this last judge has banned any additional release of this video because of threats of violence and harassment and vandalism that is already occurring throughout our country. So I believe that we need to be responsible in this committee and talk about facts. Now, you're saying that you both mentioned that one of your impetus for your legislation is to make sure that, quote, fetal, and I'm not going to use your terminology because if we're talking about medical terminology, we're talking about a medical statute that we expect our medical professionals to actually follow. I would ask and I would request of both of you that we stick to medical terminology. We do have a position on this committee. We have positions here in the hearing. And if we are going to talk about medical statutes.
Representative, you have a question.
So here's my question. So I needed to lay that out, Chair, because of the members of this committee who did not sit on that interim. So we're brought up to
Let's
speed.
proceed.
What is the purpose if there is no, the investigation that happening in Missouri has found that there is no fetal tissue donated, being allowed to donate it, there is no fetal tissue allowed in Missouri to be able to be sold. So what is the purpose of these bills?
Well, the purpose is quite simple, to make sure that those activities are not happening. These are prudent and responsible reforms to make sure that these activities are not happening in our state. And
so we're talking about something that's not really happening, but not
well,
real, but we're going to make
because
sure that what is not real is not going to ever be real.
well, this is a serious topic. There's evidence shows that it is life and work. All right.
Excuse me, so what does this have to do with the
Well,
fact
it's a
that
serious
fetal
matter.
tissue is
So
not
we should
being
have
donated?
our statutes should be more strict than what we have out, make sure that these activities are not happening.
Even though they're not happening, and we've
Well, we
had
can't
investigations.
Well,
We've had several
we can't
entities in our
verify
state.
we can't verify 100% that they're not happening. These are prudent reforms. Even if they aren't happening, it doesn't mean that they aren't going to happen in the future.
So we're talking about things that aren't real, but we're going to make sure that
Well, no,
what's
these
not
are
real
real.
is not ever going to
These
be
are,
real.
there are research companies in this country that are purchasing fetal remains.
Do you know where that's happening, Representative?
Well, we can name the companies.
Do you
STEM
know where that
Express.
is happening in the state, in the United States? Because we're talking about Missouri legislation, but.
Are you
brought up-
disputing that STEM Express purchases fetal remains, that they've never
Do
done
you know
that?
where that happens? Does that happen in Missouri?
Well, I can't verify that it's happened in Missouri.
Well, this is what that's
Well,
what I wanted to get
that's
back to.
part of the problem, is there's
Representative-
no verification
Representative,
with the department, and there's no
Representative.
tracking system. And this bill would put that in place, and I think that's a prudent reform.
are there any other questions from any other members of the committee?
May I answer this question as well?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm going to go back and try to trace back what was said. The purpose of the interim committee was because, as many states became concerned of what was shown in the video to take place, the conversations that take place, and specifically, St. Louis was mentioned as a location that was could be utilized to obtain these baby body parts. The videos that we are referencing to, which you made no reference to what organizations that you're saying did not think the videos were valid, but I will tell you that Coal Fire, who employed industry standard tools and techniques throughout the handling, processing, and analyzing of the evidence, found that they were not manipulated videos. They may have been edited for the purpose of making them concise, just like you would edit a television program. Coal Fire found that they were not. Now, there is an organization which Planned Parenthood used, which is called Fusion, and that is in fact part of the Democratic opposition research firm, and even they found there is no evidence of the anti-abortion group making up dialogue. So there's no dialogue that's made up or transpired in that regard. They also said that there is no widespread evidence of substantial video manipulation. So again, the AG did not investigate the video, so the Attorney General did not investigate the video, and neither did Health and Human Services. The department did not investigate the video. So both of those statements that you made are inaccurate. As my colleague has stated, this is something that has been brought to light out of the industry that we do not want, no one should want fetal baby body parts sold for profit. That sets an incredible precedent, in our state and in our country. So what we're doing here today is taking the work of the committee, and everyone in this room was a part of that committee, and now really updating Missouri laws so that there is not a possibility that something that's abhorrent that none of us want to have take place in our state does indeed take place in our state. So,
Very good. Thank
Thank
you. Thank you. I think that sets that part that we're focusing on these legislation and not the rest of the issues that have been brought up. Representative Brad. Proceed.
Thank you, representatives, for bringing, these bills. We all sit on these committees, and we've all seen the videos. We've all seen, what could be occurring. Like we've all said, we don't know if in Missouri this was occurring, but we do know that Missouri was mentioned as an untapped resource. And we know through investigation of the departments, they really have no ability to track, if this is occurring. By what broad language It's called representative sample. So we can put forth, they could put forth and send the smallest tissue sample and keep the remainder and sell. I mean, the ability for it is there. That is why we need to shore up these laws. You know, whether you're for or against, you know, the abortion practice, that's irrelevant. But the fact of us shoring up law to ensure that there is no market. Now, that is our charge as government, to ensure that the laws are fully enforced, and if we see there are discrepancies in the law, as we do with representative sample being such, and you know, other protocol. You know, when we speak of, you know, these videos, I liken it to no different than a security camera. You know, we catch things on the security camera, but there are many hours of feed upon that. But when it goes before court of law, they edit those videos to go before to show incriminating evidence, which is exactly what you stated with coal fire. That's what they found. That what we saw in the videos and what was edited was exactly, you know, what was occurring. It wasn't manipulated feed or anything. I just, you know, and with the ambulatory, you know, surprise, which one has the, you have the investigation. You know, with the recent court ruling of the inability to revoke licensure of the Planned Parenthood, I guess, you know, what's our recourse if we do surprise inspections now? I mean, now we have a court ruling that definitely played politics and was very one-sided with, I mean, how do we enforce, you know, even changes to this? I mean, you have, I mean, we can surprise inspect all we want, but if we have a federal court ruling saying that, oh, for everyone else, you can revoke licensure, for everyone else, for every type of surgical procedure, we can invoke because you're not following our checklist of a surgical center, but now a Planned Parenthood is set above. I mean, what do you have to say about that?
Well, I would like our laws to be as strong as possible with this regard. And it wasn't a U.S. Supreme Court ruling, it was just a lower court ruling, so there's always a chance to be appealed. There's always a chance we could have another court case and it could get overturned. So I think we need our laws to be as strong as possible.
Thank you. Representative Brown, proceed.
I did attend all of the hearings, interim hearings, and I thought what we found were holes in the process. So that what you're doing here today is trying to take those holes and make sure that those holes really are not holes anymore, that the process is a continuous process, and that's our job, isn't it, as oversight? Aren't we supposed to oversee things?
Yes, thank you. What we found is that the department was not record keeping well. We found that from, they didn't collate the two reports together, nor did they realize that the pathologist had not been turning in reports, which is old law that we have in place, yet not being followed. So it is necessary to go back now and look at this law, and the intention of it is, you know, like in any medical or any scientific process, you have to be accountable and you have to keep track of what goes on, because if you don't, then anything goes. And so that is exactly what we're doing. Again, I don't understand why there's such resistance to a process that we've identified loopholes in and we're beginning to streamline.
I remember asking one of the witnesses, I said, well, you knew this hole was there. Did you have a responsibility to come back to the legislature and say, this needs to be fixed? And her response was, well, I would never tell the legislature how to do anything. But I think that's the department's responsibility. If they see a hole in the process so that the law is not really being handled the way it's supposed to be handled, then they should tell us. And I'm sorry that we have to do it for them, but that's our job. If they're not doing theirs, it's ours to do theirs.
If I could say one thing, it's a simple question. You either believe that the selling of fetal remains is a serious topic or you don't. All right. If it is, then we need to fill any holes in the tracking process to make sure that these things are not happening in our state.
I agree. Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? Representative Carr, proceed.
Thank you, Commissioner Inquirer.
Yes, sir.
Not being an attorney, there's some words and provisions in here that I
Is your
don't
microphone
understand.
on?
Oh, this thing. Sorry about all that. 2068, page 2, line 8. I'd like to know what twice the amount of a valuable consideration received is. I have no idea.
You have no idea
No,
what that would be?
yes. Thank you, I don't know.
Okay. What we added in here, what line did you say we were at?
Line 8.
28,
Page 2.
the last line?
Yeah.
Okay. So what this does is mirror federal law, what federal law already says. So it says that the fine imposed an amount not less than twice the amount of any valuable consideration received. So it is in, let's say that you received $10,000 for your specimen that you received.
Oh, this is after you sold it?
This is the penalty for.
Oh, I understand now.
Okay,
Thank you,
you're welcome.
thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Representative Beard, proceed. Yes, sir.
Representatives, thank you. I can tell and I've watched that you've done an incredible amount of work here and really appreciate all you've done. And I think you've got some good language here. If I could just draw your attention to 2069, though, I've got a question as far as this bill goes. It requires, an abortion facility to establish and implement some written policy to protect what I'm going to call kind of whistleblowers. And as I read it, it kind of seems to leave up to the facility the ability to establish and implement these rules and procedures. So my question is that how much guidance, what do they have requirements that have to be included? Or how free are they just to draft a policy,
Sure. Gentlemen, do you have the amendment?
okay, if I do,
Yeah, you will.
okay, I'm not
It is
seeing it.
in-
Well, maybe just explain it.
Okay, so fortunately, we got some really great input, and it tells that it kind of ends in that they shall post at their place of employment in a significant number of places on the premises to ensure that the notice will be reasonably seen by all employees. The hospital, all the facilities, let's see, for whom the service is performed by individuals who may not reasonably be expected to see the posted notice shall notify each employee in writing of the contents of such notice. So the notice is being given to them. It's a standard whistleblower kind of protection that we already have.
Is that
in Missouri
language in
state
the
law.
bill?
Is it in the
Are they
bill?
required to include that in their policy? That's what I'm asking.
I see what you're asking.
Because I'd be afraid, someone could say, well, all we have to do is establish and implement a written policy. So let's say if an employee, discloses some sort of facility mismanagement, then, we'll just fire them. That'll be our policy.
So you don't think that the language in the amendment covers that?
I don't know what mine, I have to see it.
Okay, I'm sorry that you
Okay.
don't have a copy.
Okay, but it sounds like you've kind of tried to address that. So I'll look this over
Well, thank you for your input on that.
Okay, thanks.
Representative Meredith, proceed,
To inquire,
proceed.
and on bill number 2068, page 1, line 14. If someone, I guess I'm just thinking, if someone has a pregnancy which early on, for lack of a better term, goes wrong, for some reason, there's like what do you call it? It's an abortion, but it's not self-aborts kind of. And you're gonna find out what happened. And it says here that you cannot make a gift for medical, scientific, experimental, therapeutic, or use. Maybe there was something wrong with that fetus that if you knew about it and you wanted to have other children, you can find out. And I'm wondering, maybe that might preclude some of that.
Well, listed above that are the reasons that, starting on number 4, no person shall offer any inducement, monetary or otherwise, to the mother or father of an unborn child for the purpose of procuring an abortion for medical, scientific, experimental, or therapeutic use. That's already in law. So the next statement is that what we'd like to introduce is that no person shall knowingly donate or make an anatomical gift of fetal organs resulting from an abortion to any entity. So this leads us into maybe some places that we don't want to think about, which is a cycle that could start where pregnancies are began just for this purpose, to begin to, rather than receive monetary gifts, it is simply to make these donations.
Well, it also says that you cannot donate for experimental or therapeutic use. And if you want to find out what happened,
You can find out, you know, this does not, what this is moving it beyond the autopsy stage, maybe of identifying what happened to the child that is found here. This is moving it to a place where it would be, you know, experimentally used. And I guess the question would be, if you want to allow that, how do you define, how do you keep that narrow path of, I just want to know why this happened to my child?
it's slippery slope.
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Rumley,
Just inquire.
proceed.
I was at some of the hearings as well. We had a witness that called in from Texas, gave her experience as, at that time, a Planned Parenthood employee. Didn't she give prices, or did she give prices what they were getting for some of the human aid?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
Didn't she give some prices in her testimony what they were getting for some of those?
She was testifying that that this was occurring, yes.
And, you know, when you hear that, I remember the feeling that I had that how can you do this in a civilized country? And I just really appreciate you all bringing these bills. I was wondering, I gave some of the things that I would like to see done. Some of that is in these bills, and I appreciate it. And I think that we should be protecting life, and these kind of things are those steps in protecting. I appreciate what you all have done.
Well, and to kind of go back and answer your question, her testimony to the committee was really very valuable, because she gave us an inside look at not only did it happen, but where could it happen? And within that process. And that is why I think this whistleblower protection is so important, because that is how she was able to move forward, is that she was able to come out and talk about it afterward. And it's been a difficult journey for her. But, you know, we asked for testimony from, you know, the abortionist and from Planned Parenthood that would have maybe given us insight into ways that we could write this that would further align the process of knowing the tracking process, as Representative Koenig said to us. That was not available to us here in Missouri, so we had to reach outside to Texas,
Right.
basically, and bring that testimony in.
That testimony to me really spoke. If you heard the whole testimony, you could really see that how it affected her. And you know, you think about. I've been kind of close to some situations where, you know, life is, you fight for life, and you see, you know, the people that are disabled and handicapped, and you're rooting for them. You're doing everything you can to see that life. And you know, that one of the things was the whistleblower that I thought should be done. And I just feel like we as a committee, we as a people, a society, have got to stand up for life. And I'm glad that we will prevent it from happening in Missouri. Try to do our best. To do good protections that we can to protect life. I do thank you.
Representative Norton, you still have a question?
Yes, thank you. Commissioner McQuarrie.
Proceed.
I don't know what bill it's on. We, talked about so many here. My head's spinning. However, does any of these bills
Keep your
cover?
mic on, Representative.
No, once again. Sorry. Does any of these bills cover umbilical cords or placentas?
No.
So it's all right after the baby is removed. I assume they deliver a placenta and a cord. It's okay to donate that to someone for research. Okay. Because I don't think it's made clear on any of the bills that afterbirth, for lack of a better word, I'm sure serves a lot of research facilities with information. I don't know that for a fact, but so that's still all right.
Yes, and going back to referencing the videos, what they were talking about were specific organ cells, things such as that were a part of the makeup of a human being. After the delivery, then of course the umbilical cord and those fluids, we don't have those with us anymore. So we're just talking about that.
So if a woman would miscarry at a later stage and give birth to the child that's dead, that child would be sent away? The whole child would be sent to a lab somewhere to be tested?
If they wanted to determine if perhaps the mother or the doctors or whatever were interested, if they felt like it was a unique situation that they were not able to pronounce the cause of death after the baby was delivered, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't be sent away?
I think that right now what happens is that those children that are miscarried become what we call medical waste.
I ended up buried some medical waste about 30 years ago, but.
So you did a burial then?
Yeah, and as did my son and his wife.
Yeah.
She was, I don't know, 7 months or whatever.
And that's still available today?
So it don't have to be sent away?
No.
Okay.
No, it can be, and I think that I really commend you. That's a very, I think, very dear and precious process that you did.
Well, I was a paramedic for quite a few years, and I think I delivered 30-some babies. along with the fact that I probably took a dozen young women to hospitals that were close to hemorrhaging to death. And I can only assume, not knowing the facts, that it was self-induced abortion. And I think a lot of legislation just goes way too far to restrict these people from medical abortions that, of course, less frequent and safe. But to see a young girl, and I won't tell you how young, because it's absolutely ridiculous how young some of these girls mature and can get pregnant. See them on the verge of death from hemorrhaging. And there's not a whole lot you can do as a paramedic. Start fluids, get them to the hospital fairly quick. And then I'm assuming they had DNCs or whatever, I don't know how bad they tore themselves up with these ways that they self-induce abortions. That's a terrible thing. And that's one reason I stopped being a paramedic and went back to fighting fires. Too much tragedy. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Excellent. Any other questions? Now we have, based on the clock behind us, 20 minutes. Do we want to refer to the chair?
Let's recess.
We're going to recess until after our morning session.